In part one of this video series on the Panasonic AG AC90AP, we learned about the various parts on the front, top, right side, and rear of the camera. On the left side of the camera is a series of buttons, knobs, and switches. These control the functions of the camera, and it's essential that you learn what each is and what they do. The efficient use of these buttons will be addressed by your instructor. In this video, we will define each one and what they control. Although this may seem quite intimidating now, you must remember that all photographers and videographers started out with absolutely no knowledge of how cameras work or how to create superior images. With a little effort on your part, you can become thoroughly competent filming with a Panasonic camera in a relatively short time.
We begin part 2 with the LCD screen. In part 1, we discussed the viewfinder at the rear of the camera. The LCD screen is located under the mic line and power switches in the LCD compartment. This compartment is near the front of the camera, attached to the handle. To extract the LCD screen, you reach under the bottom side of the compartment to feel the extractor pull on the LCD screen. This pull is merely an extended piece of plastic that will allow you to grab the LCD with your fingers. Once you have a grasp on the screen via the pull, carefully slide the LCD screen out until it clicks into place. If the camera is on when you do this, the screen will illuminate when the extraction's completed. At this point, the screen will be facing downward and needs to be rotated counterclockwise, so the screen faces to the rear of the camera. Please keep in mind that the LCD screen is undoubtedly the most delicate part of the camera assembly, so take care when extracting, turning, or placing the screen back into its compartment. Now with the LCD screen extracted and the camera on, we can discuss the display indicators and the specific functions we can manipulate to use the camera as a creative tool. Moving around the button panel, starting from the upper left corner, you will find the Iris A/M button. This button controls whether the iris can automatically adjust or has to be manually set. In the auto iris mode, the indicator on the screen is the AGC icon. AGC stands for automatic gain control. If we press iris button to set this function into the manual mode, the AGC icon is replaced by a decibel indicator. This numeric decibel value can range from 0 dB all the way to 30 dB. Decibels, in this case, are a measurement of the voltage gain to the video signal. Adjusting these iris settings will make your image brighter or darker as you increase or decrease your gain. The larger the decibel number, the brighter the image becomes. We learned in the first video in this series that the ring on the lens closest to the operator is the iris ring. By turning this ring back and forth, we make the image brighter or darker. As we turn the ring, making the image darker, we also see that the decibel icon goes down to 0. If we stop, you'll see the word open on the monitor. Open is referring to the iris. At this point, the iris is all the way open as large as possible. There is as much light as possible entering the lens and landing on the sensors. As we continue to turn the iris ring in the same direction, we see that the word open is replaced by a series of numbers. These numbers are called f-stop. An f-stop is a measurement of how large the iris aperture is. As the number increases, the iris size reduces, letting even less light onto the sensor, thus making the image darker still. Eventually, the f-stop numbers are replaced by the word close, meaning the iris aperture is completely closed and is not letting any light into the camera. Down from the iris button is the Focus AM Infinity button. As you press this button and cycle through the different options, you will see the autofocus, manual focus, and infinity focus icons appear here. During your time at school, you'll want to make sure that you select either the manual focus icon or the autofocus icons. There are many reasons to use both, and your instructor will help you decide the benefits and disadvantages of each. The next button down is the OIS button. OIS stands for Optical Images Stabilization. Optical Images Stabilization is either on or off, and its icon is located here on the monitor. Notice that when we have Optical Images Stabilization on, the icon looks like this, and when it's off, it changes to this. Optical images stabilization helps you stabilize a shot when you're shooting handheld, but should be turned off if your camera is mounted on a tripod. The next button down on the left-hand side of this panel is the white balance button. Its designation above the button is WB. When you repeatedly press the white balance button, you cycle through 5 options. The 5 options are: number 1, ATW. ATW stands for Auto Tracking White Balance. Number 2, Lock. Lock will keep the white balance from shifting during a shot once the ATW has set a balance. Number 3, P3.2K. P3.2K stands for 3200 degrees Kelvin. 3200 degrees Kelvin is the color temperature for studio lights. Number 4, P5.6K. P5.6K stands for 5600 degrees Kelvin. 5600 degrees Kelvin is the color temperature for sunlight at high noon. And number 5, ACH or BCH. ACH stands for A channel, while BCH stands for B channel. The first setting, ATW, allows the camera to determine each color in the visual spectrum. P3.2K and P5.6K are used as presets. The fifth option, ACH or BCH, are used to set the camera's white balance manually. We use ACH or BCH at school and always manually set our white balance. Your instructor will explain white balance and the procedures for establishing it later after this video. Moving over to the next row of buttons to the right, we see Focus Assist. When we engage Focus Assist, the camera superimposes a thin red color on horizontal, vertical, and angled lines on the monitor. Although you can see the red lines, they will not record. They're only there to help you focus. Focus Assist is an excellent way to ensure proper focus, but can become a distraction if left on. The button just below Focus Assist is Zebra. Zebra stripes are superimposed hash lines that overlay onto the image that indicate exposure levels. It is a function that aids exposure by showing a striped pattern over the areas that are close to overexposure. As we cycle through the different options, you'll have a choice of: number 1, Zebra Off. Zebra 1. Zebra 1 is set at 80% of overexposure. Number 3, Zebra 2. Zebra 2 is set at 100% of overexposure. And number 4, Marker. Marker has a small square on the monitor that measures the exposure as a percentage only within that box. At school, we typically set the zebra stripes at either 1 or 2 so that we can tell if we are near or at overexposure. The last button in the middle row is labeled Bars. When we depress this button, we both turn bars and tone on or off. The bars are a series of vertical color bars across the display, including from left to right, white, yellow, cyan, green, magenta, red, and finally blue. If you have your earphones plugged in when you engage the bars and tone, you will hear a 1000 Hz tone at a negative 12 decibel level. Your teacher can explain the industry use of bars and tone. For this video, bars and tone are defined as a way to allow us to record a standard that technicians can use to ensure that playback is correct in reference to color and audio volume. The uppermost button on the row nearest the back of the camera is labeled Menu. We will cover the menu and all of the most important features that you need to know after the intermission. The button below the menu button is the Display/Mode Check button. Pressing this button will remove all of the icons on the monitor with the exception of the timecode. Pressing it once removes the icons. Pressing it a second time will bring the icons back on the monitor. We will cover timecode with the next button down. The counter button is found below the Display/Mode Check button. As the counter button is repeatedly pressed, it cycles through several choices. First is timecode. Timecode is defined as a signal recorded with your video that uniquely identifies every frame of your clip using a timestamp in hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. The uniqueness in the numbering of each frame allows for non-linear editing. The second choice is user bit, or UB. User bits differ from timecode in that the same information that is selected by the operator is applied to every frame. The third choice is SCN. SCN stands for seconds. Every time you use this mode, the clock starts at 0 and counts up as the clip is recorded. The time in this mode is measured in seconds, minutes, and hours. The last choice is no display at all. Even with no display, each frame still has the same information embedded. Each frame will still have a unique timecode and whatever user bits you choose to apply. In school, we recommend you always view in the timecode option. Below the counter button is the reset button. To reset timecode back to 0, both buttons must be pressed simultaneously. A word of warning here. There is no real reason to ever reset timecode. Moving down to a series of buttons that run horizontally at the bottom of the panel, User 1. Currently, User 1 doesn't have any values associated with it. Were this your camera, this button would allow you to manipulate different settings within the camera menu to create a specific setup and then save it under this User 1 button. Since these cameras are checked out to all students, User 1, User 3 buttons are deactivated. Right of User 3 is a switch that has two options, IA and Manual. IA stands for Intelligent Auto, whereas Manual means that you have the ability to change and manipulate the camera settings. A word of warning. Having the camera in the Intelligent Auto mode will make using this camera creatively much more difficult. Always have the switch in the manual position. If you ever experience any issues with the camera during a shoot, the first thing you should do is look to see that this switch has been moved to the IA position. The last button to the right is the Quick Start button. We have found that this button works occasionally. No need to use this function. We're now going to take a short break to let you ask any questions that you might have regarding the previous information. Make sure you are comfortable with these concepts, but remember, you can always watch this training series as many times as you need. We'll be right back.
In this last segment, we're going to discuss the menu button and how to navigate the menu interface. In the fourth video of this series, we're going to show you how to normalize the camera after you check it out from the IA's office. It is essential that you know how to manipulate the different settings within the menu, and very important that you normalize the camera each and every time you use it. These cameras are used by both night and day classes, and each has unique shooting requirements. Failing to normalize the camera may cause your footage to be over or underexposed, contain incorrect color information, or a host of other undesirable issues. All of these can be avoided by normalizing the camera before using it for your shoot.
There are two ways you can access the menu. You can either depress the menu button on the control panel or directly touch the LCD screen. The LCD screen is a touchscreen, so once the menu is up, you can make any adjustments or changes by tapping your choice of options available. If you choose to enter the menu by touching the monitor, you'll need to tap the menu options on the screen. There are more adjustments that you can make on this initial screen. Your instructor will cover these options later after the video is concluded. Once the menu is up on the screen, you'll see 4 different categories: Camera Setup, Record Setup, SW and Display Setup, and finally, Other Functions. Within each of these categories are subcategories and choices you'll make to verify the camera's settings. To access the subcategories, you tap the main category. After the subs are visible, you can page up or page down through the options, choose an option, tap back to the main menu, or exit the menu altogether.
We've concluded addressing the buttons and switches on the control panel, and you should have a relatively good understanding of what each does. The reality is, we're just scratching the surface. Knowing what a button does is one thing, knowing what option to choose or why you'd want to choose it is a whole different skill set. This is just the beginning of your path to becoming a photographer. If you have any questions, please ask your instructor for clarification, but remember, the only real way to become a great photographer is to shoot plenty of video and practice.